They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine was ice cold by the time I finished serving it, and watching my husband's world crumble was sweeter than any victory I could have imagined. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I clutched the ultrasound photos against my chest. My hands trembled, not from excitement anymore but from something darker, something that had taken root in my chest the moment I heard Hudson's voice around the corner. The moment I realized that the father of my unborn son was planning to abandon us both. But Hudson Smith had no idea what kind of woman he had married. He had no idea that his sweet, trusting wife had inherited more than just her father's green eyes. I had inherited his mind for strategy, his patience for the long game, and his absolute ruthlessness when betrayed. As I stood there in that sterile hallway, listening to my husband make plans to divorce me while I carried his child, something crystallized inside me. The naive woman who had walked into that ultrasound appointment was gone forever. In her place stood someone Hudson would never see coming. Not until it was far too late. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. The gel was still cold on my belly when Dr. Carter handed me the ultrasound photos with a warm smile. Congratulations, Gladys. You're having a healthy baby boy. My heart soared as I stared at the grainy black and white image. After 3 years of trying, countless negative pregnancy tests, and 2 heartbreaking miscarriages, Hudson and I were finally going to have our miracle baby. A son. Our son. He's perfect, I whispered, tracing the outline of his tiny form with my finger. The technician had pointed out his little hands, his strong heartbeat, even what looked like a stubborn chin that reminded me of Hudson already. 22 weeks along and everything looks excellent, Dr. Carter continued, making notes in my chart. The baby is measuring right on track. Are you still experiencing morning sickness? Not as much anymore, I replied, still mesmerized by the photos. Hudson's been so patient with me. He even installed a mini fridge in our bedroom so I could keep crackers and ginger ale close by. I laughed softly. He's going to be such a wonderful father. Dr. Carter smiled. It sounds like you have a very supportive husband. Make sure to schedule your next appointment for 4 weeks from today. We'll want to keep monitoring everything closely, especially given your history. I nodded, clutching the photos tighter. This baby was everything we had dreamed of, prayed for, fought for. Hudson had been my rock through every disappointment, holding me when I cried after each negative test, never once making me feel like it was my fault when the doctor said there was no clear reason for our struggles. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like floating on clouds. I couldn't wait to see Hudson's face when I showed him the pictures. We had agreed he would wait in the lobby since the appointment was routine, but I knew he was probably pacing by the windows, checking his watch every few minutes like he always did when he was anxious. But when the elevator doors opened, I didn't see Hudson's familiar figure by the windows. The lobby was crowded with the usual mix of patients, visitors, and staff, but no sign of my husband's tall frame or his dark hair. I pulled out my phone to call him, then remembered he had mentioned something about stepping outside for air if the appointment ran long. The summer heat was brutal this year, and the hospital's air conditioning could be overwhelming after being outside. I made my way toward the exit, passing by the small alcove near the elevators where a few chairs were arranged around a coffee table scattered with magazines. That's when I heard it. Hudson's voice. Low, intimate, the way he used to talk to me in the early days of our marriage. The timing couldn't be more perfect, Flo. She's completely focused on the pregnancy now. My feet stopped moving. The ultrasound photos crinkled in my suddenly sweaty palms. Flo. That was what Hudson called Florence. My best friend Florence Miller. My maid of honor. The woman who had been by my side through every fertility struggle, every hopeful month, every devastating disappointment. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone in the lobby could hear it. The alcove was just around the corner. They couldn't see me, but I could hear every word. Are you sure about this timing? Florence's voice was softer, but I could still make it out. She's so happy about the baby, Hudson. Maybe we should wait until after. After what? After she has the baby? After we're tied together forever. Hudson's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Flo, I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend to be happy about a pregnancy that's going to trap me in a marriage that's been dead for years. The photos slipped from my numb fingers and scattered across the polished floor. A woman walking by gave me a concerned look, but I couldn't move to pick them up. I couldn't breathe. But the baby, Florence whispered. Your baby. Our baby, Hudson corrected, and the world tilted sideways. The baby you're carrying is mine, Flo. That's the family I want. Not some obligation to a woman who can barely look at me without crying about another negative test. My legs gave out. I slumped against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the cold floor, the ultrasound photos scattered around me like fallen leaves. Other baby. Hudson's baby. To Florence. Florence Miller, who had held my hand through every doctor's appointment. Who had brought me soup when I was too depressed to eat. Who had celebrated with champagne when I finally got my positive test 6 months ago. Florence Miller, who had announced her own pregnancy just 2 months after mine. Who had laughed about how our children would grow up together, practically siblings. Who had cried happy tears and said it was fate that we were both pregnant at the same time. When will you tell her? Florence asked. After the ultrasound. I'll tell her tonight. I've already spoken to a lawyer. With her history of miscarriages and the stress of a divorce, it's possible she might lose the baby anyway. It would be better for everyone. Better for everyone. He wanted me to lose our son. Our miracle baby that we had prayed for, that we had tried so hard to conceive. Hudson wanted our baby to die so his life would be easier. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. People were walking by, stepping carefully around the scattered photos, around me sitting on the floor like a broken doll. But all I could hear was Hudson's voice, cold and calculating, discussing my baby's potential death like it was a convenient solution to a problem. My lawyer says that with the infidelity and her emotional instability, I should get a clean break. Especially if there's no child involved. The house will have to be sold, of course, but we can use that money to get something bigger for our family. Our family. Hudson and Florence. Florence's baby. They had been planning this. While I was struggling through morning sickness, while I was finally allowing myself to hope again, they had been planning to destroy my life. I feel terrible about this, Florence said. She's been my best friend since college. She'll understand eventually. Gladys has always been the understanding type. Too understanding, really. It's part of why this marriage never worked. Too understanding. I had been too understanding when Hudson started working late. Too understanding when he seemed distant during my pregnancy. Too understanding when Florence suddenly had so much time to spend with me, checking in, making sure I was okay, making sure I wasn't suspicious. I reached for the ultrasound photos with shaking hands. The image of my son, our son, stared back at me, innocent and perfect. 22 weeks. Viable. A little boy who deserved better than a father who wished him dead. I should get back, Hudson said. Her appointment should be over soon, and I need to seem excited about whatever news she has. What if it's bad news? What if something's wrong with the baby? Then that makes tonight easier, Hudson replied, and I heard footsteps moving away. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by pictures of my baby boy, as the full scope of their betrayal crashed over me like a tsunami. Not just an affair. Not just a pregnancy. A complete demolition of my life, planned down to the last detail, with my best friend as his partner in destruction. But Hudson Smith had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his wife. My father had always said I was too soft, too trusting, too willing to see the best in people. You need to develop some edges, Gladys, he would tell me. The world will eat you alive if you don't learn to bite back. I had never understood what he meant. Till now. Now, sitting on that cold hospital floor with the evidence of Hudson's betrayal echoing in my ears, I felt those edges forming. Deadly. I gathered the ultrasound photos carefully, smoothing out the creases. My hands were steady now. My breathing was calm. The crying, desperate woman from 5 minutes ago was gone, replaced by someone Hudson had never met before. Someone he was going to wish he never had. I spent 10 minutes in the hospital bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and practicing my smile in the mirror. The reflection looking back at me looked normal. Excited, glowing, everything a pregnant woman should look like after seeing her baby for the first time. Hudson was waiting by the windows when I emerged, exactly where I had expected to find him originally. He was checking his phone, probably texting Florence about their conversation. When he saw me, his face transformed into the loving husband mask he had apparently been wearing for months. There she is. He hurried over, pulling me into a hug that felt like ice against my skin. How did it go? Is everything okay? Everything's perfect, I said, and meant it in a way he couldn't possibly understand. Hudson, we're having a boy. His face did something complex. Surprise, guilt, forced joy, all cycling through in the span of a second before settling on what looked like happiness. A boy. Really? Oh, Gladys, that's incredible. He spun me around right there in the lobby and I let myself laugh, let myself seem dizzy with joy. Other people smiled at us, probably thinking what a sweet couple we made. If only they knew they were watching the performance of my lifetime. Let me see the pictures, Hudson said, setting me down. I handed them over, watching his face carefully. He stared at the images for a long moment and for just a second, something real flickered across his expression. Pain maybe. Or regret. But then the mask slipped back into place. He's beautiful, Gladys. He looks strong. Like his father, I said sweetly, taking the photos back. Dr. Carter says he's measuring perfectly. 22 weeks and everything is developing exactly as it should. That's wonderful, Hudson said, but his voice sounded hollow. Should we go celebrate? Maybe dinner at Romano's. Romano's. The Italian place where he had proposed. Where we had celebrated our first anniversary, our second, our third. Where we had gone after every negative pregnancy test because he knew their tiramisu was my comfort food. That sounds perfect, I agreed. Should we call Florence and see if she wants to join us? She's been so supportive through all of this. Hudson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Actually, I think tonight should just be about us. We can celebrate with everyone else later. Everyone else. As if Florence wasn't the mother of his other child. As if she wasn't part of his real family. You're right, I said, slipping my arm through his. Tonight should just be us. The drive to Romano's was torture. Hudson made conversation about baby names, about converting the spare room into a nursery, about how excited his parents would be to have their first grandchild. Every word was a lie, and he delivered each one with the same easy charm that had made me fall in love with him 7 years ago. What do you think about traditional names? He asked as we sat in traffic. Something strong, classic. Maybe William? Or James? I was thinking about family names, I replied, watching him from the corner of my eye. What about your grandfather's name? Theodore. Hudson's grandfather Theodore had been a bitter, cruel man who had made Hudson's childhood miserable. The suggestion made Hudson flinch, which was exactly what I had intended. Maybe something else, he said quickly. Theodore feels a little heavy for a baby. You're right. We have plenty of time to decide. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling the slight curve where my son was growing. I just want him to have a name that means something. That represents the kind of man we want him to become. He'll be a good man, Hudson said, and for a moment his voice cracked. No matter what happens, Gladys, I want you to know that I'll always want what's best for him. What's best for him? Like hoping he would die in utero so Hudson could start fresh with Florence and their baby. I squeezed Hudson's hand. I know you will. You're going to be such a wonderful father. The lie burned my tongue, but I delivered it with a smile. At Romano's, we sat at our usual corner table under the twinkling lights that had always made me feel like we were in a fairy tale. Hudson ordered wine for himself and sparkling water for me, playing the attentive husband to perfection. To our son, he said, raising his glass. To our family, I countered, clinking my glass against his. Our family. Not his real family with Florence, but the obligation family he was planning to discard as soon as possible. I watched him drink, wondering how long he had been planning this. Months? Years? Gladys, he said, setting down his wine, there's something I need to tell you. My heart stopped. He was going to do it now in our special restaurant, surrounded by the ghosts of happier times. He was actually going to sit across from me, pregnant with his child, and destroy my life over breadsticks and marinara sauce. What is it? I asked, tilting my head with the perfect amount of concern. Hudson opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands fidgeted with his napkin. I've been thinking about the future. About what kind of life we want to build for our son. And I think we should consider moving. Maybe somewhere with better schools, more space. A fresh start. A fresh start. Without me, presumably. That's a big decision, I said carefully. Where were you thinking? Maybe Portland. Or even the East Coast. I've been looking into some opportunities. He trailed off, clearly improvising. This wasn't the conversation he had planned to have. That sounds exciting, I said. Though I'd hate to leave Florence behind. She's been such a good friend, especially through all the fertility struggles. I don't know what I would have done without her. Hudson's face went pale. Right. Florence. Speaking of which, I should call her soon. I promised to tell her about the ultrasound as soon as I got the results. I pulled out my phone. She's probably dying to know if she was right about the gender. She was convinced it was going to be a girl. Maybe you could wait until tomorrow? Hudson said quickly. I thought tonight could just be about us. Of course. I put the phone away, watching him relax slightly. You seem nervous tonight. Is everything okay? I'm not nervous. I'm just processing. We're going to be parents, Gladys. It's a big responsibility. The biggest, I agreed. But we're in this together, right? No matter what happens, we'll face it together. Hudson stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Was he calculating how much longer he would have to pretend? Was he thinking about Florence, probably at home waiting for his call to tell her how the conversation had gone? Of course, he said finally. We're a team. Right up until the moment he decided to trade me in for a newer model. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and fake smiles. Hudson seemed distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. Probably texting updates to Florence about his failure to go through with the plan. By the time we got home, I was exhausted from the performance. Hudson went straight to his office, claiming he had emails to catch up on. I went upstairs to our bedroom and carefully placed the ultrasound photos on my dresser where I could see them. My son. My beautiful, innocent son who deserved so much better than the family he was being born into. I heard Hudson's voice from downstairs, low and urgent. He was on the phone, probably with Florence, probably explaining why he had chickened out. Making new plans. Adjusting the timeline for my destruction. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where my son had been conceived. The bed where I had cried myself to sleep so many nights during our fertility struggles while Hudson held me and promised everything would be okay. Everything was going to be okay. Just not in the way Hudson expected. I opened my laptop and began to research. If Hudson thought he could destroy my life with careful planning and legal maneuvering, he was about to learn that his wife was capable of her own strategic thinking. The naive woman who had walked into that hospital this morning was gone forever. In her place was someone who understood that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to destroy what threatens it. And Hudson Smith had just made himself the biggest threat to my son's future. Over the next 3 days I became a woman obsessed. Not with revenge but with information. Every moment Hudson was at work or out of the house, I was digging deeper into the web of lies my life had become. It started with Florence's social media. I scrolled through months of posts looking for clues I had missed. The photos from her girls' weekend in March. The same weekend Hudson had claimed to be at a work conference. The carefully cropped pictures from restaurants I recognized, places Hudson had taken me for special occasions. The subtle changes in her face and body that I had attributed to pregnancy glow but now realized might have started earlier than her announced conception date. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Baby Planning, and began building my case. Screenshots, dates, credit card statements I accessed through our joint account. Hudson wasn't particularly careful about covering his tracks, probably because he assumed I was too trusting to look. The credit card statements were a gold mine. Jewelry purchases I had never seen. Hotel stays in our city on nights when he claimed to be working late. Expensive dinners for two at restaurants we had never been to together. The pattern went back 8 months, starting just after Florence announced she was taking a break from dating to focus on herself. My phone buzzed with a text from Florence. How are you feeling today? Want me to bring lunch over? I stared at the message for a long moment. Florence had been texting me almost daily since my ultrasound appointment, checking in with the kind of concern that had once made me feel lucky to have such a caring friend. Now I understood it for what it was. Surveillance. Feeling good. Hudson's working from home today, so I think I'll rest. Maybe tomorrow. I typed back. Of course. Rest is so important right now. Love you. Love. She signed her messages with love while carrying my husband's child and planning to steal my life. I spent the afternoon at the local library, using their computers to research divorce law and custody arrangements. What I found wasn't encouraging. Hudson was right about one thing. With his steady income and my current unemployment status, he would be in a strong position in any legal proceeding. The house was in both our names, but his salary had paid most of the mortgage. If I couldn't prove fault, I might end up with very little. But proving fault required evidence of adultery, and Florence's pregnancy wasn't enough on its own. I needed more. I needed them to incriminate themselves. That evening, Hudson came home with flowers, grocery store daisies, the kind he used to bring me when we were dating and he was broke. The gesture was so perfectly calculated to look thoughtful while requiring minimal effort that I almost applauded. "What's the occasion?" I asked, accepting the flowers with a smile. "Do I need an occasion to bring my wife flowers?" He kissed my cheek and I forced myself not to recoil. "I was thinking we could start looking at baby furniture this weekend. Maybe make a day of it." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, arranging the flowers in a vase. Florence was asking if she could come along. She's so excited about decorating her own nursery, and she thought it might be fun to shop together. Hudson's hand stilled on his coffee cup. "That might be awkward. With her being single and all. It might make her feel left out." "Single? Right. You're probably right. I wouldn't want to make her uncomfortable." I touched my belly thoughtfully. "Actually, I've been worried about Florence lately. She seems different since she got pregnant. More secretive." "Secretive how?" I was fishing, but Hudson's immediate defensiveness told me I was in the right waters. "Just little things. She's been canceling plans, not returning calls as quickly. I know single pregnancy can be isolating, but I hoped she would lean on us more, not less." "Maybe she's just trying to be independent," Hudson suggested. "Some people prefer to handle things on their own." "Maybe." I moved closer to him, playing the worried friend. "I just wish I knew who the father was. She's been so mysterious about it. Don't you think that's strange?" Hudson's jaw tightened. "It's her business, Gladys. Maybe she doesn't want to talk about it because it ended badly. Or maybe it didn't end at all," I said softly. "Maybe he's married." The silence that followed was deafening. Hudson stared at me, and I could see the panic flicker across his face before he controlled his expression. "That's quite an accusation," he said carefully. "Not an accusation. Just a theory." I shrugged, moving to the sink to fill the vase with water. "It would explain the secrecy, wouldn't it? And the way she's been pulling back from our friendship. Guilt does strange things to people." "You shouldn't speculate about Florence's personal life," Hudson said, his voice harder than it needed to be. "She's been a good friend to you." "The best," I agreed, turning to face him with the vase in my hands. "That's why I'm concerned. Good friends don't usually keep such big secrets." Hudson left the room without another word, probably to call Florence and warn her that I was getting suspicious. I arranged the daisies carefully, thinking about the conversation I had just orchestrated. Hudson was rattled, which meant he was more likely to make mistakes. And Florence would be worried, which meant she might push for faster action. Scared people did desperate things and desperate people left evidence. That night, I lay in bed listening to Hudson's breathing, planning my next moves. I had always been good at puzzles, good at seeing patterns and connections. This was just another puzzle, albeit one where the stakes were my entire future. Hudson's phone buzzed on his nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times. Text messages at 11:30 p.m. He didn't wake up, but I memorized the pattern of the buzzes. 3 short bursts usually meant someone was upset, sending multiple messages in quick succession. I waited until Hudson's breathing deepened into true sleep, then carefully slipped out of bed. His phone was locked, of course, but I could see the notification previews on the screen. "Florence, she's asking questions. Florence, what if she knows? Florence, we need to talk tomorrow." I smiled in the darkness. Florence was panicking exactly as I had hoped. Panicked people made mistakes, and I was going to be ready to catch every single one. I slipped back into bed and placed my hand on my belly, feeling the gentle flutter of movement from my son. 23 weeks now, growing stronger every day. "Don't worry, baby," I whispered. "Mommy's going to make sure you have everything you deserve. And that the people who wanted to hurt you get exactly what they deserve in return." Florence showed up at my door the next morning, unannounced and clearly agitated. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "I hope you don't mind me just dropping by," she said, holding up a bag from my favorite bakery. "I brought those blueberry muffins you love." "Of course not. Come in." I stepped aside, noting how she avoided eye contact. "You look tired. Is everything okay?" "Just pregnancy stuff," she said quickly. "You know how it is. How are you feeling?" We settled in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Florence had comforted me through 2 miscarriages, where she had held my hand and promised that my time would come. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm doing well. The baby's been very active lately." I placed my hand on my belly, watching Florence's reaction. "Dr. Carter says that's a good sign. He thinks I might go full term this time." Something flickered across Florence's face. Disappointment? Fear? It was gone too quickly to be sure, but I filed it away. "That's wonderful," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Gladys, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Yesterday when you mentioned thinking the father of my baby might be married. What made you say that?" I took a careful sip of my tea, buying time to craft my response. "I don't know. Just a feeling, I guess. You've been so secretive about everything and you seem guilty? Like you're carrying more than just pregnancy weight." Florence flinched. "Guilty about what?" "I don't know. That's what's been bothering me." I leaned forward, putting on my most concerned friend expression. "Florence, you can tell me anything. You know that, right? Whatever's going on, whatever you've done, I'm here for you." For a moment I thought she might break. Her eyes filled with tears and her hands trembled around her mug. But then she seemed to pull herself together, the moment passing like a cloud over the sun. "There's nothing to tell," she said. "I made a mistake with someone who wasn't available, and now I'm handling the consequences on my own. That's all." "Someone who wasn't available," I repeated. "Married. It doesn't matter who he is. He made his choice and it wasn't me." The lie came so easily to her that I almost admired the skill. Almost. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "That must be so painful. Loving someone who can't be with you." Florence's composure cracked again. "You have no idea. Actually, I think I might." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. There was a time early in my marriage to Hudson when I thought he might be having feelings for someone else. The way he talked about her, looked at her. I could see the attraction. This wasn't true, but Florence didn't know that. She leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Really? What did you do?" I confronted him. I told him that if he wanted to be with someone else, he should be honest about it instead of stringing me along. I met her eyes directly. I said that I deserved better than being someone's consolation prize while he pined for another woman. Florence paled. "What did he say?" "He promised me that I was the only woman he wanted. That I was being paranoid and insecure." I laughed softly, sadly. Maybe I was. But you know what? I'm glad I said something. If Hudson had been in love with someone else, I would have wanted to know. Living a lie isn't fair to anyone involved. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Florence stared into her tea like it held the answers to all her problems. "Gladys," she said finally, "if you found out that that he had been having an affair?" I finished for her. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I would be devastated," I said honestly. "But I would want to know. I think I would want to know who she was, too. Whether it was someone I knew and trusted or a stranger." Florence's face went white. "And then what would you do?" I considered this as if I hadn't already spent days planning my answer. I think I would try to understand why it happened. What I had done wrong, what our marriage had been missing. And then I would decide whether it was something we could work through or if it was too broken to fix. And if it was too broken, then I suppose I would have to protect myself and my baby. Make sure we were taken care of financially and emotionally. I paused. Though I have to admit, if the other woman was someone close to me, someone I had trusted, I think that would be harder to forgive than the affair itself. Florence set down her mug with shaking hands. "I should go." "Already? You just got here." "I have a doctor's appointment." I almost forgot. She was already standing, gathering her purse. "Thank you for the tea. And the conversation. Florence." I caught her hand as she passed my chair. "Whatever's going on with you, whatever secret you're keeping, I hope you'll trust me enough to tell me when you're ready. I'm your friend. I want to help." She looked down at our joined hands, my wedding ring catching the light, her fingers bare, and I saw a tear fall onto our wrists. "I wish things were different," she whispered. "Different how?" But she was already pulling away, heading for the door. "I'll call you later." I watched her drive away from my kitchen window, noting how she sat in her car for several minutes before starting the engine, probably calling Hudson to report on our conversation. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Hudson, just as I had predicted. "Hey beautiful. How's your day going?" "Good." Florence stopped by for a little while. Pause. "Oh. How is she?" "Upset about something. I think she's having a harder time with the single pregnancy than she wants to admit." I injected just the right amount of concern into my voice. I tried to get her to open up, but she's being very secretive about the father. "Maybe you should give her some space. Pushing too hard might damage your friendship." "You're probably right. I just hate seeing her struggle alone." I paused. "Hudson, can I ask you something?" "Of course. If you were having an affair, would you tell me?" The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Finally, "What kind of question is that?" "A hypothetical one. I was just thinking about Florence's situation, and I realized I don't know what I would want in a situation like that. Would I want to know, or would ignorance be better?" "Gladys, I'm not having an affair." "I know that. It's just a hypothetical." I made my voice smaller, more vulnerable. "I suppose I'm feeling insecure because of the pregnancy. Everything's changing, and sometimes I wonder if you still find me attractive with all these changes to my body." "Of course I find you attractive. You're carrying my child. You're beautiful." The words were right, but the delivery was mechanical, like he was reading from a script. "I love you too," I said, even though he hadn't said it first. "I'll see you tonight?" "Yes. I might be a little late. I have a meeting that could run over." "A meeting?" "With Florence, probably to strategize how to handle my growing suspicions." "Don't work too hard," I said sweetly. "Your family needs you." Another pause. "Right. I'll see you tonight." After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the remnants of Florence's visit. The bakery bag, the 2 mugs, the lingering scent of her perfume, and smiled. They were unraveling, both of them. The pressure I was applying was working, forcing them into corners where they had to make choices. And every choice they made was giving me more ammunition. I pulled up the voice recording app on my phone and played back Florence's visit. I had started recording all our conversations just in case. Her words were damning enough. "I made a mistake with someone who wasn't available. He made his choice and it wasn't me. I wish things were different. Not enough for a courtroom maybe, but enough to plant seeds of doubt with the right people. Hudson's family. Our mutual friends. Florence's co-workers who didn't know the identity of her baby's father. I was building a web strand by strand, and soon they would both be trapped in it." Hudson's late meeting turned into a pattern. 3 times that week he called with excuses: client dinners, project deadlines, traffic delays. Each time I responded with understanding and support, playing the patient wife while documenting every lie. Meanwhile, I had begun my own meetings. With Hudson's brother Owen, ostensibly to discuss baby shower planning. With our neighbor Patricia, who had mentioned seeing Hudson's car in parts of town that didn't make sense for his work schedule. With Hudson's boss, in a casual encounter at the grocery store where I mentioned how proud I was of Hudson for working such long hours. Long hours? Roger had looked confused. "Hudson's been leaving early most days this week. Said he wanted to spend more time with you during the pregnancy." "Oh, that's sweet of him," I had replied, filing away another piece of evidence. "He must be running errands for the baby and not wanting to worry me with the details." By Friday I had enough evidence to confront them both. But I wanted more than just evidence. I wanted a confession. I wanted them to destroy themselves with their own words. That's when I remembered the dinner party. Hudson and I were supposed to host his co-workers and their spouses the following Saturday. It was an annual tradition, something we had done every year since Hudson got promoted to senior partner. This year, with my pregnancy, Hudson had suggested we cancel it, but I had insisted we go ahead. "It'll be good practice for entertaining with a baby on the way," I had argued. "Besides, everyone's been so supportive of our pregnancy journey. I want to celebrate with them." Now I saw the perfect opportunity to set my trap. "I've been thinking about the dinner party," I told Hudson over breakfast Friday morning. "Would it be weird if I invited Florence?" She's been so lonely lately and I know she'd love to meet your colleagues. Hudson nearly choked on his coffee. Florence. At my work dinner. Why not? She's practically family. And you always say your colleagues love meeting our friends. I tilted my head innocently. Unless you think it would be inappropriate somehow? No, it's supposed to be for couples. She might feel out of place being the only single person there. Actually, I don't think Roger is bringing anyone this year. His divorce just finalized. This was a lie, but Hudson didn't know that. And Florence could use the distraction. She's been so stressed about the pregnancy. I watched Hudson's face carefully. He was trapped between not wanting Florence there and not being able to explain why without raising more suspicions. If you think it's a good idea, he said finally. I do. I'll call her this morning. Florence's reaction was even more telling than Hudson's. When I called to invite her, there was a long pause before she responded. I don't know, Gladys. I'm not really in a social mood lately. That's exactly why you should come. You've been isolating yourself too much. I made my voice warm, sisterly. Besides, I could use the help. You know how these work things can be, all shop talk and golf stories. Having you there would make it so much more fun for me. What did Hudson say about inviting me? The question confirmed everything I suspected. If they weren't having an affair, why would Hudson's opinion matter more than mine for my own dinner party? He thought it was a great idea. I lied smoothly. He's always saying how much he enjoys talking with you. You two have such interesting conversations. Another pause. Hey. If you're sure it won't be awkward. Not at all. It'll be perfect. After I hung up, I began planning the evening in detail. The seating arrangement would be crucial. I wanted Florence and Hudson positioned where I could watch their interactions, but not so obviously that others would notice. The conversation topics would need to be carefully guided. And most importantly, I needed to create a moment where the truth would have space to emerge. Saturday arrived with unseasonably cool weather, perfect for the intimate dinner I had planned. I spent the morning cooking Hudson's favorite dishes: braised short ribs, roasted vegetables, the chocolate tart that had impressed his boss's wife last year. Everything had to be perfect. Florence arrived early as I had hoped she would. She looked beautiful in a navy dress that flattered her growing belly, her hair styled in soft waves that reminded me of how she had looked at my wedding when she stood beside me as my maid of honor. You look amazing, I told her, meaning it. Pregnancy really suits you. Thank you. You look incredible too. I can't believe you're cooking all this while 6 months pregnant. 6 months. 24 weeks exactly. My son was viable now, could survive outside the womb if necessary. The knowledge gave me a strange sense of power. Hudson wanted to hire a caterer, but I insisted on cooking myself, I said, leading her to the kitchen. I wanted everything to be personal, meaningful. This might be our last dinner party for a while with the baby coming. Florence helped me arrange appetizers and I watched her hands shake slightly as she worked. She kept glancing toward the door, waiting for Hudson to appear. Florence, can I ask you something personal? Her hands stilled. Of course. Have you thought about what you're going to tell your baby about their father? When they get old enough to ask questions. The color drained from her face. I'm not sure yet. It's just that children are so curious about these things. And with our babies being so close in age, they'll probably ask each other questions too. I arranged crackers in a precise pattern, not looking at her. I hope it won't be awkward for them having one father present and one absent. Maybe the father won't be absent, Florence said quietly. Oh. Is there hope for reconciliation? I don't know. It's complicated. These situations always are, I agreed. Especially when there are other people involved. Other relationships that could be damaged. Florence set down the cheese knife with trembling fingers. Gladys, I need to tell you something. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice calm. What is it? But before Florence could respond, the doorbell rang. Hudson's colleagues were arriving, and the moment dissolved into a flurry of greetings and introductions. Roger came with his wife after all, destroying my lie about his divorce, but Hudson was too distracted to notice. Patricia and her husband brought wine. James and his new girlfriend contributed stories about their recent vacation to Greece. I played the perfect hostess, making sure everyone had drinks, facilitating conversations, keeping the mood light and festive. But beneath the surface I was conducting an experiment in human psychology. I seated Florence directly across from Hudson at our dining room table, with me at the head where I could observe them both. Throughout dinner, I guided the conversation toward topics I knew would create tension between them. Florence has been such a support system during my pregnancy, I announced during the main course. I don't know what I would have done without her, especially during those scary early weeks when we weren't sure everything would be okay. Hudson's fork clattered against his plate. Florence's face went pale. It's wonderful to have friends who care so much, Patricia commented. When I was pregnant with my twins, I had terrible morning sickness, and my best friend Sarah came over every morning to help with breakfast. That's exactly what Florence did, I continued, smiling at my friend. She was here almost every morning making sure I was eating, keeping me company. Sometimes I felt guilty about how much time she was spending here instead of focusing on her own pregnancy. I didn't mind, Florence whispered. I wanted to help. And Hudson was working such long hours then, I added. Florence was often here when he got home from his late meetings. You two probably saw each other more than Hudson and I did for a while there. The silence that followed was deafening. Roger cleared his throat and changed the subject to the upcoming football season, but I could see that several people had noticed the strange tension in the room. After dinner, while I was in the kitchen preparing coffee, Florence appeared beside me. I can't do this, she said urgently. Gladys, I can't sit there and pretend. Pretend what? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. You know what? You've known for days, haven't you? The questions you've been asking, the things you've been saying. Her voice broke. How long have you known? I turned to face her, abandoning all pretense. I heard you. At the hospital after my ultrasound. I heard every word. Florence's legs gave out and she sank into one of my kitchen chairs. Oh God, Gladys, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And you let me believe we were friends while you planned to destroy my life. It's not like that. I love you. You're my best friend and I hate myself for what I've done. But not enough to stop doing it. Florence looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. He says he's going to leave you anyway. That the marriage has been over for years. If I don't stay with him, he'll just find someone else and you'll lose everything for nothing. So you decided to help him along. How generous of you. I'm pregnant, Gladys. I'm having his baby. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to be my friend, I said softly. You're supposed to tell me the truth instead of helping my husband plot against me. From the dining room came the sound of laughter, Hudson entertaining our guests while his wife and mistress faced off in the kitchen. The normalcy of it made the whole situation feel surreal. What are you going to do? Florence asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had held my hand through miscarriages, who had been my maid of honor, who had promised to love and support me through anything. The woman who was carrying my husband's child while pretending to be my friend. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But Hudson made one mistake when he decided to betray me. What's that? He underestimated what I'm capable of when someone threatens my child. I walked back to the dining room, leaving Florence alone with her tears and her guilt. As I served coffee and dessert, I made small talk and smiled at all the right moments. But my mind was spinning, calculating, planning. The evening wound down around 11, our guests praising the meal and promising to reciprocate with invitations of their own. Florence left with barely a goodbye, her eyes red and puffy. Hudson helped me clean up in unusual silence. That was nice, he said finally, loading the dishwasher. Everyone seemed to have a good time. Florence seemed upset about something, I observed. She left pretty quickly. Pregnant women get emotional. It's probably nothing. Nothing. The destruction of our marriage, the betrayal of our friendship, the threat to our unborn child's future. All of it was nothing to Hudson. I'm tired, I announced. I think I'll go to bed. I'll be up soon. Just want to finish cleaning up. But when I got to our bedroom, I could hear Hudson on the phone in his study, his voice low and urgent. I pressed my ear to the wall and caught fragments of conversation. She knows. Have to move faster. Can't wait any longer. I smiled in the darkness. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. I had forced them out of hiding, made them desperate, pushed them toward the kind of mistakes that would give me everything I needed. Now it was time for phase 2. Sunday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and my laptop. Hudson had left early for what he claimed was a golf game, but I knew better. He was meeting Florence, probably discussing how to handle the fact that their secret was out. What they didn't know was that I had spent most of the night setting the stage for their destruction. My first call was to Hudson's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor Smith was a formidable woman who had never quite approved of me, but she doted on her son and had been over the moon about our pregnancy. She answered on the second ring. "Gladys, dear. How are you feeling?" "Actually, Eleanor, I'm concerned about something and I was hoping you could give me some advice." "Of course. What's troubling you?" I injected just the right amount of worry into my voice. "It's about Hudson. He's been working such long hours lately, staying out very late, and I'm starting to worry about the stress he's under. You know how important it is for expectant fathers to take care of themselves too." "That does sound concerning. Have you talked to him about it?" "I've tried, but he brushes off my concerns. Says it's just a busy period at work." I paused. "Eleanor, I hope this doesn't sound paranoid, but do you think there's any chance he's struggling with the pregnancy? Having doubts about becoming a father?" The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Eleanor spoke, her voice tight. "What makes you ask that?" "Just little things. He seems distant, distracted. And there are times when I talk about the baby that he looks almost trapped." I let out a shaky breath. I keep telling myself I'm being oversensitive because of the hormones, but what, dear? Yesterday at our dinner party, something happened with my friend Florence that made me wonder if Hudson might be confiding in someone else instead of me. They seemed to have some kind of understanding, and when I mentioned it, they both got very uncomfortable. "Florence Miller? Your maid of honor?" "Yes. She's pregnant too, actually. Due about a month after me." I paused as if the thought was just occurring to me. "Eleanor, you don't think Hudson would? I mean, if he was having doubts about our marriage, about the baby, you don't think he would do something foolish?" "What kind of foolish thing?" I let the silence build as if I was afraid to voice my suspicions. "I don't know. I probably shouldn't even be thinking such things. It's just that Florence has been so secretive about her baby's father, and Hudson has been so distant, and there are all these late meetings." "Gladys," Eleanor's voice was sharp now. "Are you suggesting that Hudson is having an affair with your friend?" "I don't want to think that. But I'm scared, Eleanor. I'm scared that my husband doesn't want this baby, and I'm scared that my best friend is lying to me about something important." My voice broke convincingly. "I don't know what to do." "You sit tight," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm going to have a conversation with my son." After I hung up, I called Hudson's brother Owen with a similar story, then his sister Angela. By noon, I had planted seeds of suspicion with every important member of Hudson's family, all of them now wondering why their golden boy was acting so strangely during what should be the happiest time of his life. My phone rang at 1:30. Hudson sounding frantic. "Gladys, what the hell did you say to my mother?" "What do you mean?" "She just called me demanding to know if I'm having an affair with Florence. She says you're worried about my behavior, that you think I don't want the baby." His voice was rising. "Where would she get ideas like that?" "I called her because I'm worried about you," I said, letting hurt creep into my voice. "Hudson, you've been so distant lately, so secretive about where you are and what you're doing. I thought maybe you were having second thoughts about the baby, and I wanted your mother's advice on how to support you." "So you told her I was cheating?" "I didn't tell her anything definitive. I mentioned that Florence has been acting strangely, and that you two seem to have some kind of secret understanding." I paused. "Hudson, if there's something going on that I should know about, please just tell me. The not knowing is killing me." "There's nothing going on," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I can't believe you would call my family with wild accusations." "They weren't accusations. They were concerns. From a pregnant woman who loves her husband and is worried about him." I let tears enter my voice. "I'm sorry if I handled it wrong. I just didn't know who else to turn to." The line went quiet for a long moment. When Hudson spoke again, his voice was tired. "We need to talk. I'll be home soon." "Hey. I'll be here." I hung up and smiled. Hudson was coming home to do damage control, probably to try to convince me that I was imagining things. But he was too late. The storm I had unleashed was already beyond his ability to control. My phone buzzed with a text from Florence. "Hudson told me what happened. Can we meet?" I need to explain. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Come over. It's time we were honest with each other. She arrived before Hudson, which was perfect. I met her at the door and she looked terrible, pale, shaking, her eyes red from crying. Gladys, please, you have to understand. Come in, I said quietly. Sit down. Tell me everything. We sat in my living room, the room where Florence had helped me hang baby pictures just last month, where she had held me when I cried about my miscarriages, where she had toasted my pregnancy with sparkling apple cider. It started 6 months ago, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I was going through a rough patch after breaking up with David, and Hudson was working late a lot. We ran into each other at that coffee shop near his office, and he offered to buy me dinner. And you said yes. She nodded. It was innocent at first. Just two friends talking. But Hudson was so easy to talk to, so understanding. He listened to me complain about my job, about being single, about feeling like I was falling behind while everyone else was moving forward with their lives. Including me. Including you, she admitted. And he talked about feeling trapped, about how you had become so focused on getting pregnant that he felt like you didn't see him as a person anymore, just as a means to an end. The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my face neutral. So you bonded over your shared resentment of me. It wasn't like that. Not at first. Florence twisted her hands in her lap. But then you did get pregnant, and Hudson was so conflicted about it. He said he was happy but also terrified. That he wasn't sure he was ready to be a father, wasn't sure your marriage was strong enough to handle a child. And you comforted him. I tried to be supportive. I told him that having a baby might actually bring you closer together, that maybe he was just scared of the change. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. I really did try to encourage him to work things out with you, Gladys. I swear I did. But somewhere along the way, comfort turned into something else. She nodded miserably. One night about 4 months ago, we had too much wine at dinner. I was feeling lonely and unwanted, he was feeling trapped and misunderstood. We both made terrible decisions. And you kept making them. We tried to stop. We both felt horrible about it. But then I found out I was pregnant and everything got complicated. Whose idea was it to hide the truth from me? Florence's silence was answer enough. His, I said. Hudson didn't want to deal with the consequences of his choices. So he convinced you to lie to your best friend while he figured out how to abandon his wife and unborn child. He said he was going to tell you. That he just needed time to figure out the right way. The right way to destroy my life, you mean? The front door opened and Hudson's voice called out. Gladys? I'm home. Florence and I looked at each other, and I saw my own determination reflected in her guilty eyes. This was it. The moment of truth. We're in the living room, I called back. Hudson appeared in the doorway, took in the scene. Florence on the couch with tears streaming down her face, me sitting calmly across from her, and his face went white. What's going on? Florence was just telling me about your relationship, I said conversationally. About how it started, how long it's been going on, about the baby. Hudson's mouth opened and closed without sound. Finally he managed, Gladys, I can explain. No need, I interrupted. Florence explained everything. How you felt trapped by our marriage, how you didn't really want our baby, how you've been planning to leave me for months. I stood up, my hand automatically going to my belly. The only thing she couldn't explain was why my husband and my best friend thought it was acceptable to destroy my life while pretending to care about me. It wasn't supposed to happen this way, Hudson said weakly. How was it supposed to happen? Were you going to wait until after I gave birth to abandon us? Or were you hoping I'd lose the baby so you could leave with a clear conscience? Hudson flinched as if I had slapped him. I never wanted you to lose the baby. Yes, you did. I heard you say it, Hudson. At the hospital. You said it would be better for everyone if I lost the baby because of the stress of a divorce. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face crumbling. You heard that. Every word. About how our marriage was dead, about how you wanted to start fresh with Florence, about how my baby was just an obligation you didn't want to deal with. Florence made a choked sound. Hudson, you said those things? I was upset, he said desperately. I was scared and saying things I didn't mean. You meant them, I said quietly. And now you have to live with the consequences. What consequences? Hudson asked, though his voice suggested he already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. I smiled, and for the first time in days it was genuine. The consequences of underestimating your wife. The next morning, Hudson woke up to find that his world had shifted completely overnight. I had been busy while he slept, making phone calls, sending emails, executing the plan I had been building piece by piece for weeks. Gladys. He found me in the kitchen, fully dressed and eating breakfast with apparent calm. We need to talk about last night. What about it? About what happens now. About how we move forward. I looked up from my cereal, studying his face. He looked terrible, pale, exhausted, his usual confidence replaced by something approaching panic. We don't move forward, Hudson. That's the point. What do you mean? Instead of answering, I handed him a manila envelope that had been sitting beside my placemat. Your lawyer called this morning. Or rather, my lawyer called your lawyer. You might want to review those documents. Hudson's hands shook as he opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside. I watched his face change as he read, satisfaction building in my chest with each expression of shock and dismay. You filed for divorce, he said finally. Yesterday, while you and Florence were having your crisis meeting. I took another spoonful of cereal. I also filed for full custody of our son, a restraining order preventing you from disposing of any marital assets, and a motion for immediate spousal support. You can't do this. I can, and I have. My lawyer says I have an excellent case, especially with all the evidence I've gathered. Hudson's face went white. What evidence? I stood up and walked to the counter where I had laid out several manila folders. Credit card statements showing your hotel visits and expensive dinners for two. Screenshots of Florence's social media posts that contradict her stated due date. Photos of your car parked outside her apartment building at all hours. I opened another folder. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between you two, including several during times when you told me you were in important meetings. That's not enough to prove adultery. You're right. But this is. I pressed play on my phone and Hudson's voice filled the kitchen. The baby you're carrying is mine, Flo. That's the family I want. Not some obligation to a woman who can barely look at me without crying about another negative test. The blood drained from Hudson's face as he listened to his own words, the conversation I had recorded at the hospital. When it finished, the silence was deafening. That's illegal, he whispered. Recording someone without their consent. Actually, it's not. I was a party to the conversation, which makes it legal in this state. My lawyer was very thorough in explaining the surveillance laws. I smiled. But even if it weren't admissible in court, it would be very interesting to hear what your colleagues think about a senior partner who abandons his pregnant wife for her best friend. You wouldn't. I already did. I sent copies to Roger, to the other partners, to your biggest clients. I thought they should know what kind of man they're doing business with. Hudson sank into a chair, his head in his hands. You've ruined me. No, Hudson. You ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. My phone rang and I glanced at the caller ID. That's my lawyer now. We're meeting this morning to discuss the next steps. I stood up, gathering my purse and keys. You should probably call your own attorney. You're going to need one. Gladys, wait. Hudson looked up at me with desperate eyes. We can work this out. We don't have to destroy everything we built together. What did we build, Hudson? A marriage based on lies. A home where you wished our child would die. A friendship with a woman who was sleeping with my husband. I shook my head. There's nothing left to save. What about Florence? Are you going to destroy her too? I paused at the door. Florence destroyed herself. But don't worry. I'm sure she'll need a lot of support raising your child as a single mother. Maybe you can bond over that. I left Hudson sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal, and drove to my lawyer's office with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. Janet Morrison had been recommended by a friend as someone who specialized in high-conflict divorces and didn't believe in playing nice when her clients had been wronged. She was exactly what I needed. You've done excellent work gathering evidence, she told me as we reviewed the files. With what you've collected, we can pursue adultery as grounds for divorce, which gives you significant advantages in property division and custody arrangements. What about spousal support? Given that you left your job to focus on fertility treatments and preparing for motherhood, and given his infidelity, I'm confident we can secure substantial alimony. Especially since he'll be supporting another child with his mistress. Janet smiled grimly. Men like your husband always think they're smarter than everyone else, right up until they realize they've handed us everything we need to destroy them. And custody? With his infidelity and the recording where he expresses hope that you'll miscarry, any judge will see him as an unfit parent. We'll get full custody with limited supervised visitation. She leaned forward. Gladys, I have to ask, how far are you willing to take this? What do you mean? Your husband is a successful attorney with a good reputation. This divorce is going to destroy his career, his finances, his relationship with his family. Are you prepared for the fallout? I thought about the conversation I had overheard, about Hudson's cold calculation as he discussed my potential miscarriage. About Florence's tears as she helped plan my destruction while pretending to be my friend. He made his choice when he decided to betray his family, I said firmly. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Good. Then let's discuss strategy. We spent 2 hours going over every detail of my case, every piece of evidence, every angle of attack. By the time I left Janet's office, Hudson's fate was sealed. But I wasn't done yet. My next stop was Florence's apartment. I found her packing boxes, her face puffy from crying. Going somewhere? I asked when she opened the door. My parents' house in Oregon. I can't stay here anymore. She gestured helplessly at the chaos around her. I lost my job this morning. Someone sent my boss copies of text messages between Hudson and me. Very explicit text messages. That's unfortunate. Florence stared at me. It was you, wasn't it? You destroyed both of us. I shared the truth with people who had a right to know it. What they chose to do with that information was up to them. My baby is innocent in all this, Gladys. Whatever you think of me, whatever I've done, this child doesn't deserve to suffer. You're right, I agreed. Your child doesn't deserve to suffer. That's why I'm making sure Hudson will be paying substantial child support. My lawyer has already contacted his attorney about that. Florence's face crumpled. I never meant for any of this to happen. I loved you. You were my best friend. Best friends don't sleep with each other's husbands, Florence. Best friends don't help plan the destruction of each other's lives. I stepped closer. But you're right about one thing, your baby is innocent. And maybe when they're older, they'll be wise enough not to make the same choices their parents did. I left Florence crying in her half-packed apartment and drove home to find Hudson waiting for me with his own lawyer, a thin man named Carter who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mrs. Smith, Carter said as I entered the living room. I've been reviewing your demands with my client and I have to say they're quite extensive. They're fair given the circumstances. My client is prepared to offer a more reasonable settlement. 50-50 split of assets, joint custody of the child, modest spousal support for 2 years. I laughed. Absolutely not. Gladys, be reasonable, Hudson said. You're trying to take everything. I'm taking what I'm entitled to as the wronged party in this marriage. Your lawyer can explain to you how adultery affects divorce settlements in this state. Carter cleared his throat. Mrs. Smith, while we acknowledge that there have been indiscretions, the evidence may not be as clear-cut as you believe. In response, I handed him a USB drive. Audio recordings of your client admitting to the affair and expressing hope that I would miscarry our child. Video surveillance of him entering Florence's apartment building on multiple occasions. Financial records showing expenditures on another woman during our marriage. I smiled. Would you like me to continue? Carter's face went gray as he reviewed the contents of the drive. This is quite comprehensive. My client is prepared to make this very public if necessary. Hudson's colleagues have already received copies of some of this evidence. I'm sure the local bar association would be interested in the rest. You're destroying everything, Hudson said desperately. My career, my reputation, my future. The same future you were planning to build on the ashes of my life? I sat down across from him, my hands resting on my growing belly. Hudson, you made a choice. You chose to betray your wife, to wish harm on your unborn child, to plan our destruction while pretending to love us. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. What do you want? Carter asked. 70% of marital assets including the house. Full custody of our child with limited supervised visitation for Hudson. Spousal support of $5,000 a month for 10 years. And a public apology acknowledging his infidelity and abandonment of his family. That's absurd, Carter sputtered. That's my offer. Take it or we go to court and make this even more public. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. After they left, I sat in my living room, soon to be entirely my living room, and felt my son moving inside me. Strong kicks as if he was already fighting for his future. Don't worry, baby, I whispered. Mommy made sure you'll have everything you deserve. And the people who wanted to hurt us got exactly what they deserved in return. I was rocking my son Noah in the nursery of our house, my house now, when the doorbell rang. It was Florence, looking tired but healthier than the last time I'd seen her. I hope it's okay that I came by, she said when I answered the door. I wanted to see how you were doing. I'm doing well. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. How are you? Better. Therapy has helped a lot. And my daughter is beautiful. Her voice caught slightly. I named her Grace. That's a lovely name. We stood there for a moment in awkward silence. Noah made a small sound and Florence's eyes went to the baby in my arms. He's perfect, she said softly. He looks like Hudson. He has his chin, I agreed. But I think he'll be a better man than his father. Florence's eyes filled with tears. Gladys, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance we could ever be friends again? Our children are siblings and I thought maybe someday. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman who had been closer to me than a sister, who had betrayed me more completely than any enemy ever could. No, I said gently. We can never be friends again. But for the sake of our children we can be civil. We can coexist. Florence nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. I wanted you to know how sorry I am. How much I regret everything. I know you are. But being sorry doesn't undo the damage, Florence. It just means you understand the price of your choices. After she left, I returned to the nursery and looked out the window at the garden I had been cultivating. Hudson had signed the divorce papers 3 days before Noah was born, taking my terms rather than face the public humiliation of a trial. He had visitation rights, but he had only used them twice in 6 months. His career was in ruins, his reputation destroyed, his relationship with his family strained beyond repair. Florence's daughter would grow up in Oregon, far from the scandal that had consumed her parents. Hudson would pay child support for both children, a constant reminder of the choices that had cost him everything. And Noah would grow up knowing that his mother had fought for him before he was even born, that she had refused to let anyone threaten his future or diminish his worth. I had learned something important about myself in those dark months. I was not the soft, trusting woman everyone believed me to be. When pushed to my limits, when my child was threatened, I was capable of a cold, calculated ruthlessness that surprised even me. Some people might say I went too far, that my revenge was excessive. But as I held my son and watched the sun set over the garden that was now ours alone, I felt no regret. Hudson and Florence had made their choices with full knowledge of the consequences. They had chosen their desires over loyalty, their selfishness over love, their immediate gratification over the lives they were destroying. I had simply made sure they faced the full weight of those choices. Noah stirred in my arms, his tiny fist curling around my finger. He would grow up safe, secure, and loved. He would never wonder if his father wanted him to die for the sake of convenience. He would never doubt his worth or his place in the world. That was worth any price I had paid for it. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Hudson missed his child support payment again. Do you want me to pursue enforcement? I looked down at my son's peaceful face and typed back, yes. Every dollar he owes. Some people believe that revenge is a dish best served cold. But I had learned something different. Revenge isn't about temperature. It's about precision. It's about making sure that the punishment fits the crime perfectly, that justice is served completely, and that those who would harm the innocent face the full consequences of their actions. Hudson Smith had wanted to destroy his family for a chance at happiness with another woman. Instead, he had lost everything: his wife, his children, his career, his reputation, his future. He was alone now, exactly as he had planned to leave me. Florence Miller had wanted to steal her best friend's husband and build a life on the ruins of my marriage. Instead, she was a single mother in exile, struggling to rebuild a life she had destroyed with her own choices. And I was exactly where I belonged, in my home with my son, having fought for and won everything that mattered. The doorbell rang again, interrupting my thoughts. This time it was a delivery, flowers from my mother-in-law Eleanor, who had become one of my strongest supporters once the truth came out. The card read, "For my darling Gladys and precious Noah. You are both so loved." I smiled, arranging the flowers in the vase that had once held Hudson's grocery store daisies. Everything in my life now was real, chosen, earned. No more lies, no more pretense, no more settling for less than I deserved. As night fell, I gave Noah his bottle and sang him the lullabies I had dreamed of singing during all those months of trying to conceive. His eyes drifted closed and I placed him gently in his crib, the crib I had bought with my divorce settlement, in the nursery I had decorated with my spousal support, in the house I had kept through my own determination. "Sleep tight, my love," I whispered. "Mommy made sure you'll have everything you deserve. And she made sure the people who tried to hurt us got exactly what they deserved in return." In the months that followed, I would rebuild my life completely. I would go back to school, start my own business, create a future built on truth and strength rather than naive trust. Noah would grow up knowing his mother was a woman who fought for what was right, who protected those she loved, who never backed down when faced with injustice. Hudson would remain a cautionary tale, a man who had everything and threw it away for the illusion of something better. Florence would live with the knowledge that she had traded her integrity for a love that had ultimately cost her everything she truly valued. And I would live knowing that when faced with the ultimate test of motherhood, protecting my child from those who would harm him, I had passed with flying colors. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine had been ice cold by the time I finished serving it, and watching my husband's world crumble had been sweeter than any victory I could have imagined. The woman who had walked into that ultrasound appointment 6 months ago was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous to anyone who might threaten her family. Hudson Smith had made the mistake of underestimating his wife. He would spend the rest of his life making sure he never made that mistake again. And as for me, I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. Sometimes protecting what you love means destroying what threatens it. And sometimes the only way to ensure justice is served is to serve it yourself, with precision, with patience, and with the absolute certainty that you are fighting for something worth winning. In the end, that was exactly what I had done. And as I watched my son sleep peacefully in his crib, surrounded by the security and love I had fought so hard to preserve, I knew it had been worth every moment of the battle. Justice, it turned out, was indeed a dish best served cold. But it was also a dish best served completely, thoroughly, and with the kind of precision that ensured it would never need to be served again. The naive woman who had trusted blindly was gone. In her place was a mother who would never let anyone threaten her child's future again. And that, more than any revenge, was the greatest victory of all.